Call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and opening prayer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We pray. Lord, keep this nation under your care. Bless the leaders of our land, that we may be a people at peace among ourselves and a blessing to the other nations of the earth. Grant that during this election season, we may choose trustworthy leaders who will contribute to wise decisions for the general welfare, and grant that we would serve you faithfully in our generation. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. All right. Roll call is taken. Yes, all right, we're missing 1, 2, 3. All right. Would look for a motion on the pads for to approve the agenda. I have a motion by Supervisor Augustine, second by Supervisor Romden. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, you may register your vote. We're having, yes. Okay. Okay. We put a good price on entertainment value here. Okay. There is 17 yes, none opposed. Motion carries. Motion to approve the minutes from the previous meeting. I have a motion by Supervisor Patricia, a second by Supervisor Kinnard. Is there any discussion on that motion? Any discussion of the minutes from previous meeting? Seeing none, you may register your vote. And 17 yes, none opposed. Motion carries. Moving on to citizens' input. Do we have anyone? We have none. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to the board? Anyone who wishes to speak? Anyone who wishes to speak to the board? All right. We'll move on to appointments. I will take all of these appointments at once if that is acceptable to the board. Seeing no objections, I would look for a motion. Motion by Supervisor Yonke, second by Supervisor Patricia. Is there any discussion on the motion? Supervisor Augustine.
Who's on the union negotiation subcommittee?
That was it's me as the chair, Supervisor Poppy, Supervisor Baker, and Supervisor Vollenweider. Any other discussion? Any other questions? All right, you may register your vote. We have 18 yes, none opposed. Motion carries. We would move on to reports. And under reports, the administrator has included health insurance plan overview, and that was requested by me just because there were some questions by supervisors regarding the healthcare plan, how that's funded, how that works, what role that plays in benefits, and also what it means to be self-funded. And so I thought, well, since there's a curiosity, I'm sure that Mr. Kroll will do a much better job than me in explaining that.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. The report is in the packet, so if anyone has a chance or had a chance to already review that and has questions, feel free to mention that at any time, and I'll do my best with it. I know Paul's also here, who also is deeply involved in the health insurance plan structure. This report tonight is about the structure of the plan, the financials of it. not actually using the plan. If we were going to talk about using the plan, I would invite our consultants from Horton to come because they really are the experts of the ins and outs of accessing care through the plan. So as I mentioned in the introduction, county health insurance, like ours, is a complex system. I want to talk to you tonight about just the basics, 5 minutes or less probably to kind of just give you what it is. We use a plan where we contract and access Centivo's PPO and high performance plans. That was reached a couple of years ago after a review for cost effectiveness and effectiveness of the benefit for our employees. We are self-insured and we have a stop loss coverage. So what that means is we actually own the pool that is the funds that we operate the plan. We purchase into using a broker system to access the Centivo network, but we are the owner of the risk. So our employees pay into the fund in cash. We fund premium equivalents, so we essentially make contributions on their behalf. But those contributions are never actually made in cash until and unless the claims come through. So it's kind of kept in the pool. The funds are available to fund every claim. But as we can kind of see, as we think through it, if those claims are never realized, that's one of the advantages of being self-insured. You don't have to pay the full premium if the claims are less than 100% of the medical loss ratio. So year to date, and this will vary. You can't make an accurate projection on this. You can't say it is this number today and therefore it will be that number the rest of the year. It probably has changed by now. Matter of fact, I'm sure it has. But year to date, we've seen 88% medical loss ratio between premiums and premium equivalents and claims coming in a little bit less than that. So that's so far, that's a healthy situation. We're happy to see that. If claims were higher than the premiums and premium equivalents, then that's an indication of risk for the county, for the plan anyways. So that's when you're the self-funded organization, you essentially own the risk. That's kind of the simplest way to think about it. Rather than if you purchase into a larger group, then you lose some of that control and you're, you basically offload the risk, but you also don't control the design the plan and you don't necessarily, you'd have to change the whole plan from provider to provider and change contractual relationships, all of those things if you wish to make changes. So the advantage of being self-funded is if it's a good year, you come out ahead financially, and you also have the autonomy to structure the plan how you need to for the employees. So we do offer two primary health insurance options, the PPO plan, which is kind of like a traditional network plan where you can access a broader network of providers. And then there's the high performance plan, which is strictly, well, Centivo runs data and puts certain providers into the high performance plan who meet certain metrics on their end. Tends to be, I think, a lot of Prevea providers, if I remember right, which is a little bit of a challenge for some of our staff because Prevea doesn't have as much of a presence in Kewaunee County. It's more have to go into the Green Bay area. So as far as accessing those high performance providers, there's sometimes been some challenge. Well, I wouldn't say challenges, but it's less convenient. Otherwise, that's more or less what I had prepared. There's more detail in the report itself, but if you have any questions or anything, I can try to answer for you. Be happy to do that.
Any questions? Yes.
So what if there's a lot of claims, like people or get cancer or whatever, and we go way above that, then our premium is gonna be added on?
Oh, thanks Supervisor Luke. You brought me back to something that I mentioned briefly, but then moved on from stop loss insurance. So as a function of operating the plan, we also buy a stop loss insurance, and stop loss insurance, if you think about it as like catastrophic insurance for your health plan. For us, the stop loss kicks in when an individual has $55,000 in claims in a year, or if the plan itself, there's a threshold for the plan itself. If it reached a certain amount, which I believe is a little bit over 9 million. I had that in the briefly mentioned in the report. But what's that? Oh, 2.9 million. Okay, thank you. The 9 stuck, the 2 didn't. But yeah, so thank you for that. So that's if we hit those thresholds, individual claimants or the plan as a whole, then the stop loss insurance would kick in and pay the remainder there. So And there's a premium associated with that. We don't get that for free, obviously.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Supervisor Yonke.
So as far as the premium being paid, it's like 17% and 16.
Approximately, yep. The splits are in there. They're, yeah, 85 to 15 or give or take. The one is 17% employee paid, 16% employee paid. Yep. So generally, it's about an 85 to 15 employer to employee split, where the employee pays a smaller share.
So being self-funded, does the county's portion get taken out of that fund?
The county makes funds available to pay the claims out of that fund. So we never actually do the cash transfer. Paul, you may have more on this than I do, but on how premium equivalents work in practice. So Paul's a better resource here. He can probably answer it with less words than me, hopefully.
So the premium is split between employee and employer, regardless of which plan it is. It's roughly 15-16%. So every pay period, 15% are the prorated, 15% for that pay period will come off your check. The employer's portion also runs through payroll and goes into our health insurance self-insured fund. And that happens for anybody who's enrolled. And then when we get claims, and that's where Centivo is the administrator, they process the claims and they know what the network is and they run them through. They say, here's your claims to pay. That comes out of the self-insurance fund. So at the end of the year, if we did things right, we will be at or above what our revenue is coming from both the county's 85% portion, as well as the employees portion. Now, if you look through the budget or if you look for the financial statements, you will see both of those places. Every department that has employees who enroll in health insurance will have some amount being charged to their budget, and that would be the 85% employer portion. All of the premiums that's collected from individual departments and the employees that's withheld from their checks ends up in the self-insured fund to pay claims. Did that answer the question? I forgot where it came from.
Supervisor Yonke.
There.
All right. Other questions? And it should be noted, I believe I am correct, that we do not require if somebody has a spouse who has another plan available through their employer, we allow them to be on the county's plan, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So we offer two options. An individual can enroll or a family. And there's no check made against whether or not the spouse or family has access to benefits elsewhere.
Other questions? Okay. Figured we'd have a brief report on that since those who are on finance committee get to talk about insurance periodically at great length, but others don't get to hear much about it, and it does affect other committees. All right, moving on. Anything else under your report, Mr. Pearl, or is that all?
No, thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to committee reports. Are there any questions on any of the minutes that you have reviewed? All right, seeing none, we will move on to the first reading of ordinance. We have none. So we will move on to consideration of resolution. Whenever you are ready for the first one.
A resolution approving budget adjustment, healthcare calculation correction for 2024 annual budget. Fiscal impact, increase in budgeted health insurance of $389,237 and increased revenue of $325,347 and reducing transfer to fund balance by $63,890.
Well, now see, our previous presentation was just a perfect segue into this. Is there a motion on your pads? Motion by Supervisor Romden, second by Supervisor Baker. Discussion or, yeah, why don't we, I could see there is discussion. Why don't we first, maybe it would be helpful. I know Mr. Kunish is eager to come up here and explain this. The board will be very kind to him. But just as I look around, I think we're going to maybe be further ahead if we just have you come up and explain this before we open it to discussion.
Oh, there's no button there. So this comes from about a year ago during the 2024 budget process. First of all, this is me. This is not Ed, who was here last year's administrator. It's not department directors. I picked up the wrong column of numbers when calculating the health insurance. And in the memo that I believe was in the packet, it explains some of this, but essentially the amounts budgeted in those departments that we talked about 2 minutes ago was under because I picked up the previous years. I'm sorry, I picked up the employer part, not the full premiums. When I calculated it through, it was lower than it should have been. Now, any other year, that would have stood out. But as our administrator mentioned, in 2023, we switched from Humanitas and TiVo at a significant savings. Not all of that savings was recognized in 2023 because the plan options went from simply single family to single and family, and you could you could select the PPO network or the narrow network, and they all had different prices. So any budget year, including this one, I know that any employee's best guess at what they're going to select is what they already have selected. Going from 2 to 4, we didn't know, so we didn't go all the way down to the full, I think it was about 11% savings. We just stayed at 0. So there's going to be some recognized in 23, some in 24. So during the budget process, when I see some health insurance numbers go down, it didn't jump out the way it would have, of course, in any other year. I will say that near the end of the budget process, Ed did say, well, that was too easy. And looking back, yeah, I can see why. But there were other things. We had 500,000 from the Village of Luxembourg that was completely unexpected. We had a $500,000, $515,000 increase in our state shared revenue because of the at something I don't remember. It's a supplemental. So there were things in place that hit it, and I guess I'm just lucky enough that that's the year I made the mistake that wasn't caught until about May or June financial statements of this year, when the trend keeps showing that we're under, and that by that point that shouldn't have been happening. So the correction for this is to best mimic what would we have done during the budget process. And we would have adjusted sales tax up a little bit, I believe. We didn't need to, so we didn't. We probably would have adjusted our interest earnings up a little bit like we did here. And there was some put in fund balance because the jail at that time, as it is now, was a little unknown. I believe we budgeted 20,000 for the doors, but there was a potential for other things to happen that, looking back now, it isn't going to happen this year. So there was revenue available to cover that. And when that point in the budget process, we didn't need it. So we left it essentially where it was the previous year. And now we know why the budget process was so easy for that year. So this, and it's important to do now because the budget process for 2025 uses 2024 as a starting point. I am already tripping over the fact that these numbers are lower, and I'm going to be seeing that for the rest of the budget process. So I want these in there and updated as soon as possible so I can compare to an actual number, not a number that I now know is a little low. So that's why it's before you today. Any questions?
You sure you don't want to just say that it was Ed since he's not here to defend himself?
Well, we are on camera, so no.
Nobody watches these. Any questions, Supervisor Teske?
I just want to know, yeah, this amount of money. What is that now?
Yes. My starting point for 2025 will be the increased amounts in those revenues. So sales tax is up to, I forget the number. 1.5 million instead of the 1.4 million, I believe it was. That's my starting point for this year. So I get a good read on where we were last year, had it been corrected, compared to this year as we're putting the budget together. Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I started from the correct budget numbers for 2025. I discovered this June statements were right about the time I was starting the budget process. So those. Yeah, we will be adjusting every department up quite a bit. So if we look at 2024 to 2025 budget before any revisions, before this entry, it's gonna look like our health insurance is going up 16+%, plus the 3% we have in the budget right now. So this, first of all, this could have been a lot worse. We could be undercharging 120 plus employees and have to explain to them now it's changing. And yes, I did have a slight panic attack when I thought that was a possibility. So the correct amount is being charged. We just have to bring the budget to where it should have been. And having this correct amount as our starting point will make sure that 2024 is correct. The right amount will be there. And 2025 builds on the corrected amount from 2024, which I believe is what you're asking.
Okay,
No? Okay. Yes. So this is about 16% shortfall. We're going to add that to the, we have 3 or 5% increase that we're projecting for 2025.
other questions while we have Mr. Kunish up here? All right, seeing no further discussion, you may register your vote. No. Well, there's always choices, they're just not good ones. Supervisor Teske, is there a problem with her pad? Eighteen yes, none opposed, motion carries. We're ready for the next resolution.
A resolution calling for state investment in mental health funding.
Is there a motion? Motion by Supervisor Shelton, second by Supervisor Vollenweider. Is there discussion? All right, seeing none, you may, you may register your vote. Eighteen yes, none opposed. Motion carries. We'll move on to the next resolution when you are ready.
A resolution authorizing entering into a contract with Cadence Consulting LLC. Fiscal impact funds already budgeted in the new jail capital project fund.
Is there a motion? Motion by Supervisor Augustine, second by Supervisor Lazansky. A little bit of background before we open this up to questions. I did vote in favor of this in committee so that it would be forwarded here to the full board, though Supervisor Baker will maybe speak to it a bit as well, but I have serious doubts about this. The staffing issues, we've been watching this for a very long time now. They have not improved. I have serious reservations about proceeding down the path of a very, very costly project to the voters when the staffing issues have not improved. So it is difficult for me to support moving ahead, moving in a direction where we get to the end and have a building we can't staff. Further discussion, questions? Huh? Oh. You are? Oh, okay. Supervisor Patricia, now you're on.
Thank you. I do believe I saw Sheriff Josky, if he's able to speak to the staffing concerns and where they see it both right now and projecting into the future, I'd request him to speak.
Come on down. Make sure you turn that on first.
Missing button. Sure. So to your question, Supervisor Patricia, We have seen this change, and we go back to when this all started almost 10 years ago now. When we started this planning, we were getting upwards of, 40 applications. We were having eligibility lists. We were doing some amazing things, and we've seen it across the board, across law enforcement agencies, really across the economy, as far as everybody's inability to really both recruit and retain employees. So we've changed it over the years to try to be more responsive, more proactive. And even with all those steps in place, we might get one. I just made a job offer to one young lady that we're hoping to bring on here in the next 4 weeks after background checks. But in the meantime, then I had a retirement and a resignation. So we're really literally walking in quicksand. And it's not just us, it's across the board. So as the chair had said, pursuing with this, we could pursue it now, because really this is sort of just an evaluation of sort of the history of it, right? Sort of a look at where have we been, where are we now, and how do we best proceed? So whether that happens now and we reach a point that we put it on hold, because we will have to ultimately somewhere along the line put the brakes on if we don't have the staffing caught up, or we hold off on this until we get there. So it's literally chicken or the egg. Do we move forward and pause, or do we pause, wait, and then move forward? We all know that this is a project that needs to be done, but we can't be in denial of the obvious reality of staffing. Would love to do it, would love to move forward, but we'd be kidding ourselves and we'd be lying to the public to say that we're going to be able to occupy that building in 2 years or even 3 years out. So I commend this board for taking caution. I feel bad that I had to raise the flag of caution, because we were on a great path. I think we were working in a trajectory, but we always have to look at the current landscape. And that's not only financial, interest rates, all the different things that we've battled with. Staffing's a big part of that. So again, wherever this goes, we're going to continue to work to build up that staffing, because even outside of the new building, we know that we've been woefully understaffed for decades. This whole idea of a jailer dispatcher combo, we know is outdated, and we need to get beyond it. So we're going to continue to recruit and retain and keep on this path. And maybe at some point we can come back together and say, hey, look, we're actually there. Maybe there'll be a change in culture, society, whatever that is, to say, we're actually there, we're confident. Do we want to step off again? Whether that's in 3 years, 4 years, 2 years, whatever that looks like. So it could go, again, one of those two options, either proceed and pause, or pause and proceed. Those are the two ways I see it.
The issue, though, that I've raised previously too is in the meantime, though, we can't do nothing for 2 years, 4 years, 5 years. There's required maintenance, there's required, there are things that must be done to the current facility. And so my position has been, we can't put in whatever amount of money and then say, well, in a year, or I don't think a year, nobody sees this changing in a year, but in 2 years or 3 years, well, now we're going to abandon that building. Although even if the situation did change in 3 years, it would still be realistically another 2 years beyond that. But anyway, we do need to bear that in mind. I think you would agree.
Absolutely. And I think that we continue to work with the jail inspector, because I don't think that we've, just said, put everything away, shelve it for another 20. I think that a conversation is warranted to say, listen, we're up against the wall in regards to staffing. We have an honest intention, but we can't, again, work in defiance of the obvious. So I think whatever solutions, when we look at remedies, when we look at corrective action to the current facility, we have to look at what are those? Are those 5-year, 10-year? We talk about the roof. Do we put a 50-year roof on a 10-year and 8-year structure? So it's going to be a lot of those decisions as far as what is that threshold. We know there are corrective measures that need to be taken, but we have to be careful not to go too far and overspend, right? We want to make sure that we're good stewards of that money. So it's going to, this whole discussion is going to cause further discussions, and that's good. It's all good. We'll make it work no matter what, right? I mean, my obligation as elected sheriff is to operate the jail. The resources for that come from this body. So I will work with every resources that are provided to me. That's the way it's always been. It's the way it's always will be.
Supervisor Augustine.
I do agree with you on sticking the money into the old jail. And I think that's one of my issues that I have. And I think that's why we should proceed forward with hiring Cadence Consulting. We're not going to be building this jail in a year. This is going to probably be another 2-year process to walk down the road with Mike from Cadence to figure out where we were and where we're going. And I think that if we can show the jail inspector that we're still moving forward, that should help us not have to stick those millions of dollars into that old that old jail, which I do not support at all because that building is beyond repair. I mean, I can see doing the repairs we have to do to get us through. I'm hoping staffing turns around in 2 or 3 years too. We won't know that answer, but I think we need to keep moving forward on this project. Maybe slow the pace down a little bit, but I'm in favor of hiring Cadence Consulting at this time to keep moving forward on the project.
Supervisor Vollenweider?
I don't disagree, in regards to how much money we're looking at putting into the jail to meet the required repairs, as per the guidelines from the state, jail inspector. Like the sheriff indicated, we could look at proceed and pause. Proceeding slowly isn't a bad idea. I would be concerned at how much money we proceed with going forward in the process and how much of what we're designing and planning could possibly change in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years on our requirements. It's kind of a catch-22. What do? Do you do nothing? I don't think doing nothing is a right answer either. I think one of the most critical things we need to do is in the immediate is addressing the jail minimum requirements we need to be safe and operational. But the other thing is, more importantly, I think we need to try to sit down and budget at least some money each year going forward, that we have at least a startup amount of money. How much per year? I don't know. Let's say in 3 years, we've got a few $1 million. Whatever the case may be, at least start putting some money aside for a new jail that we know is going to be the ultimate goal.
We do have Michael Hacker from Cadence Consultants here tonight. I don't know if the board wishes to hear from him address some of the points that have been brought up. I'd be happy to have him come forward. Okay, sure. All right. So, if you're okay, Mr. Hacker, we'd be happy to have you, come up and address some of the points, some of the concerns that have been raised here.
Well, good evening again, Mike Hacker with Cadence Consulting. Happy to answer any additional questions, but I think all the dialogue so far very healthy, and I think you're absolutely spot on. I think the goal of Cadence coming on board really is to help answer some of those big unknown questions, right? A bit of it's looking back, right? Lessons learned coming out of the prior effort, why we're over budget, what decisions led to that. Was in fact the bids that came in, are those reflective of what the bids would be today or not, right? Was that due to the moment in time those were bid? We had discussed some strategies on how we can validate that through some third-party cost estimating and maybe restructuring the bidding approach. One of the key steps would be looking back at our contractual agreements with the architects and the construction managers to assess what of their work is still valid going forward, and if in fact those relationships are still the relationships we should continue with as a county in these next steps. So I think some important decisions there that need to be made just to lay the groundwork to decide, in fact, does this project proceed forward as we thought it did before? The reality is the budget that the value that came in before was not in line with the budget, right? The project couldn't proceed forward at that cost based on the budget that was there. So some decisions likely need to be made, right? The project may look a little different, may need to be sized a little different. We may need to think about how we phase in to that project over time. But the goal of Cadence in at least this first phase is really just to help. What are those questions? Let's go find those answers. Let's have the dialogues we need to have and support the county, the committee, and then ultimately the board in preparing yourself with the data to make informed decisions going forward. And that's really the goal of Cadence. Phase one, as we spoke of last time, is really an hourly rate at the direction of the county, right? So you give Cadence direction on exactly what we need to go research, what we need to bring back to the group. And the time is really spent just at the direction of the county, and that can be stopped at any time. And so really the risk is only in the moment of what direction was given. And at any point we could pause or say we need to buy some time before we're ready to make next decisions. That's totally fine. 95% of the work Cadence does is with public sector clients, and you move at the pace that the client's ready to move. And some projects go very quickly, other ones take some time, and we're fully structured and very aware of that.
Supervisor Shelton? Green means go. Pull it down. There you go.
All right, so this is just a point of clarification. In the terms and condition in 5A,
it just mentions that you will have staff working with you. So I guess my question is, there's $175 an hour. What are the staff an additional rate? And if so, what would those wages be?
Yeah, so fair question. So phase one, I am the staff, and that is the rate for my time. Phase two, eventually down the line, when we start to dialogue about overseeing design process, bidding, reviewing pay apps that come in, we have a broader team, but that's built into the percentage fee that's there. So the hourly rate is for my time, and you're getting my expertise.
And if you have
my time.
secretaries or whatever, that's all included in your time.
Yep.
And I have a follow-up question. I'm assuming that we have this in the budget for this kind of work. This is not really directed towards you, but maybe towards Chairman Olson.
That would be directed toward Mr. Kunish.
Yeah, during the 2024 budget process, there was 1.9 million, I think, 1.9 even or 1.9 round, close to it, put in the budget because at the time we were looking at a different contractor. That one didn't work out. But the money for the jail process is in the jail capital improvement fund. And 1.9 million is there for the jail project, which this certainly is a part of it, planning, designing, finding out what's still salvageable. So that money is already there. There's no question about that. And that's one part of the original 4-ish million that was voted on when the green light was given in, I gotta think what year, 2022, we said, yes, we're gonna build a jail. And then I think 2023, it didn't happen. But in that initial one, we set aside about 4 million of fund balance and other sources. That's still there. The 1.9 is currently in the budget for that.
Other questions for Supervisor Lukes?
I think it's time we make a decision on what we're gonna do. We've been batting this ball around for years. And even if we decide to go ahead and build a jail at some point, we still have to fix what we have. Because it's gonna be years before this happens, even if we keep moving ahead. And I'm afraid that the information we get now might be irrelevant in 4 or 5 years. So it's more money that we're throwing at looking at a jail and nothing is happening.
Supervisor Swaggle.
I respectfully must say, this definitely seems going down the road, or leading down the road for the new jail. And as people have said here tonight, we need a jail today. So if the maintenance would have been done on the present jail, as I've said before, it would not be in the disrepair that is now. If the roof had been seal coated in a timely fashion, whatever a flat roof needs, and what other updates. So I am voting no to this. There's no question. Fix the jail, make it work. There was not electronic monitoring or some of that stuff back in '68. Make it work. Fix the roof, put a roof on it.
Surprised to hear you say you'd vote no.
Thank you,
But,
Chairman.
nonetheless, other questions, further discussion, Supervisor Brown.
Well, we never get any numbers as to what it would take to remedy the jail that we have now. You know, and even if we decide to build this jail, and I said this before, I mean, we're talking about $1 million a year to run a new facility. As of today, we spend $10,400 to house prisoners in other jails. How do we justify spending that much money to up that staffing to watch the same amount of people? I realize that the dispatch area in that jail it's terrible. I wouldn't work in there. But we have a conference room that's right across the hall, and there's no reason why we couldn't utilize that space. It may take some money, but it sure would be nice to have some numbers. We still don't have any estimate on the roof repair. We don't have any information on what it'll take here to fix the doors. We have door issues. I mean, we need some numbers, but to build a building and spend that much more money, I can't see how we can justify that. I mean, we could send prisoners that we need to other facilities for years and years and years before we would accumulate 1 year to operate a new jail. It just doesn't make any sense. It's gonna drive taxes through the roof for everybody. I don't know. It's sad that we let that building fall apart for so many years to get to where we are now. We have roads that need repair. We have other buildings in this county that need repair. We're not gonna have those funds if we decide to go ahead with this. That's all I got to say.
Other questions, further discussion? Supervisor Romden?
This might be my own personal observation about this, but I'm looking at this proposed contract or the agreement. And we're in the first part of it, in item number 2, it talks about scope of services, phase 1 project roadmap development services. And you turn it over and it talks, at item 4, it talks about proposed compensation, and there's phase 1 and a phase 2, path A, path B. I guess I'm kind of confused. How do you develop a roadmap if you don't know where you're going?
Does you care to try to answer that, Mr. Hacker? Unless that was a rhetorical question, I'm assuming it wouldn't.
No, I'm
100%.
Because
So
the other comment would be if you start on a map and then you come to a fork in the road and you say, okay, we're going to item 1, which is, or path A, which is one direction, or path B, which is another. I think we're looking to get from point A to point B in a straight line. We don't want to be dancing around all these curves and all this stuff.
Yeah, so in phase 2, path A and path B, the only difference there is really duration of time. And there's a critical decision that needs to be made whether or not the county is going to continue with the same architectural partner or not. So if we continue with the same architectural partner and revise the drawings we have, the timeline's much, much shorter. Okay, so in translation, Cadence's effort is much, much less. If in fact, we need to and decide it's best to pivot and hire a new architect and redesign the project, it's probably an 8 to 10 month difference in writing an RFP, going through the process of selecting the architect and starting that design process again. No bias on my part. We do what's best as a group. We make that decision. But in terms of me today providing a proposal for that second phase down the line, with that uncertainty, we provided 2 options. So both of those are on the table for the county's consideration. That's the only difference between those 2.
okay. Supervisor Shelton?
So it seems to me that phase 1 will ultimately lead to phase 2. So if we accept Cadence, am I understanding that we're really moving forward on building it? We're moving towards the path of building a new jail. That's what I'm, there's a roadmap and
Yeah, so
that's the ultimate goal
Yeah.
of this contract.
yeah, there's no preconceived expectation on our part that there will be a phase 2. It's in the county's best interest to have that pre-negotiated now.
Mhm.
So that's the reason generally
I
clients
understand.
ask that. So that's the only reason there is a phase 2 there. We start today with defining what are the questions we need to answer. We bring forth and support you in deciding that. If in fact, building a new facility is not the next step, we fully understand that. Then we do need to take a look at what does need to happen in the existing building and we could be there to support that
And
conversation.
phase 1 would incorporate some of those things.
That is phase 1. Yep.
Okay,
Is
so
supporting
if
you
we
making
choose-
that
If we
determination.
choose not to move forward on a new jail, we would have your guidance on the other part.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Other questions? Supervisor Yonke?
I would like us to hold off on the contract, maybe until next year, keep the money in the budget and see how the White House goes here. I think a lot can change after this election. So that might change our minds one way or the other.
Okay. Any other questions? Further discussion? Supervisor Baker?
And where Scott is with regards to delaying. But I've heard a lot of different directions we might go. And I propose to amend the motion that's in front of us right now. with some stipulations that make sure we cover all those bases.
You have your motion and your amendment that you can
Yes.
clearly state, or
Yes. I
hold
think-
on, wait
okay.
till the clerk is ready. We got to get to the right page. All right, you may proceed.
That during-
Slowly.
that
Although
during-
she types faster than me, you probably can speak at a normal speed.
that during the phase one study effort, consideration will be given to jails with fewer beds than the current design. Consideration will be given to jail designs with fewer beds than the current design. Two, consideration will be given to jail designs with lower minimum staffing levels than the current design. Three, consideration will be given to making upgrades to the existing jail in lieu of constructing a new jail. Perhaps giving us 10 years before needing to construct a new jail. And at the conclusion of the phase one study, the findings will be presented to the board, the county board. And any subsequent actions and spending for the study or the jail project in general will require county board approval.
That completes your amendment?
Yes.
Okay. An amendment longer than the resolution. Is there you've made a motion for the amendment? We need a second on that for the amendment? Yes. Is there a second on the amendment? Are we able to do that in the pad? Do you want that by hand? All right, Supervisor Poppy seconds it. So the amendment is made by Supervisor Baker. It is seconded by Supervisor Poppy. So now we will go to discussion of the amendment. Supervisor Lukes.
You got amendment in there that you're gonna have less staffing, but I think the staffing, if I'm understanding it right, is set by the state, how many you need.
No.
Am I wrong?
No, it's not set by the state. I don't know if the sheriff would like to speak to that. It's determined. I mean, the state jail inspector would certainly have a say in it, but it's determined by the needs of the facility.
Yes, thank you. So I mean, really, that is a local decision based on design. That being said, I mean, we have to always make sure we're looking at realities. So as the current plan stands, and basically as a baseline, you need to have a 24/7 master control. Boom, there's your one, right? You need to have at least one full-time dispatcher. Hopefully nobody disregards that, right? You have to have a pod role, what we call somebody that's attending to the needs of the inmates, because the dispatcher can't do it and master control can't do it. So there's your other one. Now we also need somebody that's going to back up that dispatcher as well as support the master role, right? They are typically in a typical staffing, you got a 24/7 booking. There's your form. But what we've said is, let's use that booking as a flex, because we're not always booking people in. So we can ebb and flow that, and control that. That's our staffing model. It is a unique staffing model. It is a bare bones staffing model. That's not set by state. That was set by us looking at it and saying, I don't know how we carve that down anymore. That would require the 5 additional staff that we have called for and that have been budgeted. And again, that is with everyone healthy. And I will say this every day, we need to know that we are never healthy. So that even if we do increase the staff by 5 to be able to sustain those 4 hosts, I'm telling you right now, we're going to be running sometimes with less than that, right? So don't start me off in an emergency status where I'm literally running around hair on fire, sort of. You know, make sure that we're at least starting healthy, knowing that 95% of the time we're not healthy. That's just a reality from the last 2 decades of reality. So yeah, the staffing, I mean, we can go ahead and, you know, the way it was posted in there, I mean, that's great. But in the end, you need to realize that as sheriff, as I said before, I have a constitutional obligation, a statutory obligation, in the operation of that jail. And if I do not have adequate staffing, I will not house inmates. That needs to be said very clearly. That's not something that can be, sort of strong armed in. I will make sure that it's a safe environment for the inmates. It's a safe environment for our employees. That's on me. So I'm willing to work together with that, but we need to understand some thresholds here and not dip into dangerous levels. So that being said, again, no, it's not dictated by state.
I'm trying to picture you running around with hair on fire.
The only thing by state is if you have females housed, you need to have a female on presence. If you have males housed, you have to have a male. That's the baseline, typically 2 staff members in the jail at any time.
And of course, this is, we're talking about that particular facility. Whether there is another design, I think that's what the amendment is getting at, is that we consider other designs that might possibly, whether that's a reality or not. Supervisor Patricia.
A question for your sheriff. In the interest of, excuse me, in the interest of saving money, have we looked at the feasibility of shipping all of our inmates out to other counties and only holding them and paying somebody to just kind of be a shuttle service to bring them back? And if you have not considered that, why is that not feasible?
We've considered that many, many years ago, early stages. Actually, phase 1 of the last project was those kind of realities. What were some options? I think we had up to option 6, right? And these were all options. The bottom line is we will always probably have to house inmates out, especially looking at decreasing capacity, right? We will, for the mere reason of classification. We've talked about that. If we end up with myriads of classification that I can't put this person with that person or that person with that person, somebody's got to go. So we will be housing out of county, but the idea of just saying we're going to wholesale house everybody out, it's not going to happen. I've talked to all the adjacent sheriffs, right? They said, Matt, we love you. We'll house your people when you need us to. But in the end, when we need our space, we will kick you out, right? Or if you have a difficult inmate, we're going to call you and say, get them out of our facility. We cannot force another county to take on our obligation of running a jail. So this idea of just saying, let's just ship everybody out, it's just not a reality, right? So if we decide to decrease the scope of this project, whatever it takes to get us in under budget, but again, there's going to be a equal, just like anything else, right? There's going to be equal reaction. So you do this, there's going to be this, and this is housing additional inmates out of county. So you look at decreasing the initial capital outlay for increased long-term operational costs. That's always the trade-off. It's sort of like overtime and staffing. Decrease the staffing, overtime goes up, right? Decrease the size of the jail, you're going to house inmates out of county. And that's a decision we all need to make together to what are we willing to absorb in those 2 trade-offs, right? So to your question, there is never going to be a wholesale, let's just get out of the jail business. Can't happen, won't happen. We have an obligation to house people convicted within our county. Now, can we stream that down to an absolute minimum? I would hope so. But I think we got to walk away from this illusion that we're just going to farm out everything. We can't, because we can't tell another sheriff, you have to house our inmates. They won't do it no matter the price you pay. Some point in time, they will kick us out.
Supervisor Vollenweider?
Could I just get clarification from court counsel on the original motion and second that there was no action taken on it? It was just overridden by an amended motion?
There was original motion on the resolution as presented in the packet. The amendment is what the vote would be on at this time, and that's what the discussion is on, is the amendment to the motion. After the amendment is voted on, the actual resolution would then be voted on as amended if it passes.
So at any time that we've got something before us and we're gonna have a motion and a second to vote on it as presented, someone can present an amendment to the original proposal of any sort
It can be amended, yes.
without taking action on the original motion and second.
Well, with a second, during the discussion, you can amend. So in this stage, we can amend it if the board chooses to.
But if the amendment passes, then we go to the back, you said that we go back to the motion, the original motion, but wouldn't the amendment, wouldn't we be passing the motion as amended if the motion is approved?
Would you not vote on the original motion and second and it either dies or passes?
No.
We're more or less stapling an amendment onto the original motion. We vote on the piece of paper that we're stapling onto it, then we vote on it as a whole. Is that correct?
That doesn't sound right. I'm sorry.
Parliamentarian to answer that.
So if you vote yes to the amendment, the document before you that you're voting on is amended. Then you vote on that document as amended. So you have a motion to change the document or change what's presented in front of you. If the board decides to change that, then that changed document, that amended document would be what your second vote would be on. So you'd first have to decide as a group whether or not you want to amend it, and then you'd have to decide whether or not it passes.
Right.
We all have the opportunity to do what Senator Kerry famously said. We can vote for it before we vote against it. In other words.
Corporation Counsel is a
Yes, yes.
parliamentarian.
So can we go back to the first resolution and have a comment?
Have a comment on the first resolution? No, we have to vote on the amendment at this time. Sir, Supervisor Augustine, and then back to our Supervisor Vollenweider, you're still speaking? Okay, Supervisor Augustine.
Just to clear up the amendment, Mr. Baker, does that include hiring Cadence Consulting with your amendment?
So can you turn on your microphone, please, so that the hearing impaired in the room can
Yes,
enjoy
it
the
would.
conversation?
It is a stipulation that will be part of the phase one study effort.
Okay, so.
Thank you.
Okay, so your amendment includes that we would approve. Just adds more language to the, okay, any other discussion on the amendment? I'm going to have, yes, Supervisor Gillett.
So a question for Cadence then, if the amendment were to pass, would the contract that is before us be agreeable to Cadence? Because the county board would be putting extra stipulations
And before,
into that.
before he answers, can we have that amendment read back? Is that possible?
You have it written there.
Make sure that he understands what he's answering here.
And maybe a point of clarity, when I said the current design, that is the venture design that's out there. That's not 100% clear that I didn't mean our current jail design.
Mhm. Okay.
Okay, so during the phase one study effort, consideration will be given to jails with fewer beds than the design currently under consideration. Secondly, consideration will be given to jail designs with lower minimum staffing levels than in the design currently under consideration. Third, consideration will be given to making upgrades to the existing jail in lieu of constructing a new jail, perhaps giving us 10 years before needing to construct a new jail. And four, at the conclusion of the phase one study, the findings will be presented to the county board, and any subsequent actions and spending for the study or the jail project in general will require county board approval.
Now you can answer the question.
So the quick answer is yes. So our services in phase one would assume that all of those very fair questions would be a part of what's being assessed. And so that doesn't change the parameters of what we believe our services would be or what is proposed. So I'm comfortable proceeding.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Any other Supervisor Teske? Could you turn your microphone on, please? Oh, you sure? I'm not seeing green and I'm not hearing you very well. All right, what was the quick?
She asked to read 1 and 2 again.
Okay,
Could Jamie please read 1 and 2 again? Please.
So that during the phase one study effort, consideration will be given to jails with fewer beds than the design currently under consideration. And secondly, consideration will be given to jail designs with lower minimum staffing levels than in the design currently under consideration.
thank you. Any other discussion on the amendment? All right, are we able to vote on the amendment on? Okay, so you may vote on the amendment. Supervisor Yankee, Supervisor Brown, there we go. Supervisor Brown. No go. Okay. Okay, so there's 13 yes, 5 no on the amendment. The amendment passes. So now, according to the parliamentarian, we return to the original motion, which is now amended. A motion as amended. So, is there any discussion on that? Further discussion? Okay. So as soon as the clerk is ready, we'll vote on the amendment or the motion as amended, sorry, resolution as amended. All right, you may register your vote. Supervisor Lukes this time. Okay, we have 9 yes, 9 no. That means that we have a tie. A tie means the motion fails. Correct? All right. Next on the agenda, we move to the next resolution whenever you are ready.
Declaring Kewaunee County's commitment to expanding affordable internet access.
All right, do I have a motion for that resolution? Supervisor Shelton, seconded by Supervisor Patricia. Are there questions on that resolution? Is there any need for, yes, Supervisor Teske?
I read the attachment to this, and I'm sorry to say I didn't hardly understand any of it.
Okay, well,
There's a lot of initials in there. Don't give me initials, I want the words.
all right,
But I
well,
hope somebody is here that can
well,
enlighten us.
we have that person for you. Mr. Neverman, if you would like to come up to the podium. While Mr. Depo's hopes of getting home early for his anniversary slip away. Maybe we could excuse Mr. Depo, I suppose, if we are on the last of, maybe not. All right, go ahead. Is he on?
I'll fix it for next one.
I'm August Neverman. I live right near Stangleville, just so you know who I am. So I'm a Kewaunee County resident. I'm also a broadband consultant for New North, which is a 18 county region. And I do consulting and other things. I have lots of experience in IT, so please ask me questions. I'm here for you.
Supervisor Teske, what does he need to answer for you?
Explain this resolution.
Sure, I'd be happy to. The broadband committee wanted to bring this to your awareness. We're not asking you to allocate any funds at this point. We're asking you to be aware that you may be considering putting funds against BEAD funding. So BEAD, the Broadband Equity, Access, and Deployment Fund. It's from the federal government. It's got $42 billion in it. State of Wisconsin received $1.1 billion. It's being managed by the Public Service Commission in an office called the Wisconsin Broadband Office. So that 1.01 billion is sitting there. Internet providers can apply for it. We don't have to apply, but we can support their applications. This county has about 3,800 residents who the feds declared as being unserved or underserved. Like my house, I theoretically have 100 meg. The best I get is 5 meg off my internet. And I'm betting you know lots of other people like that. Hopefully, most of those would get fixed by this. So why are you involved? Well, you can write a letter or a resolution. If it's a resolution, then you can allocate funds or time. So the resolution gets 7 points, and that resolution can include funds, so cash, or a loan, functionally similar, but not exactly the same, or in-kind trades. You could give space on a tower, you could waive fees, that sort of thing. The main thing we're trying to communicate is that this stuff's happening. Starting November 1st, there's going to be grant round number 1. What that means is internet providers are going to start showing up, and we want to know, does the board want to get that? Do you want to direct that to the broadband committee, or do we just say nothing? So the committee recommended what you see in front of you as a way to handle those broadband requests from Charter and Spectrum, and could be Bug Tussle, could be any company that provides internet service could come and ask questions about this. So you're going to officially be directing them to the broadband committee. That's the main thing. And the other thing you're directing us to do is come back to you with proposals in the form of a resolution, as it states in the resolution. So that really all this is you're telling us to do stuff. And this just clarifies things, because as an example, it currently doesn't have a cash. If I remember correctly, did I read it right? There's no cash entry. So then as the broadband committee, we can tell a provider, we can't give you cash because the board directed us that we couldn't do that. So we can't even make the proposal, but we could propose a loan. And we could also propose in-kind trade and other, what would I maybe call incidental things. Like you could waive sales tax. You could, like I said, offer space if somebody needs physical space for a hut or a tower, that sort of thing. And I apologize if I use terms that are technical. I was a CIO for pretty much my whole life, an IT guy. So stop me and ask questions. So did everything I say so far make sense? Okay.
Mr. Kroll, did you have anything to add on that as well?
Yes, I would. So I would just add that for context, because the broadband committee had a really robust, probably hour-long discussion about this. The resolution in front of you, the intention is to give us a foundation, because we are scheduling now and will be continuing to have meetings with internet service providers that are wanting to potentially come into our area and expand services in response to these BEAD grants. So the providers themselves are writing to the grants, and they're going to want to know, does the county support this project? And we're going to want to tell them, we can maybe support your project, but here's what we would like to see in the project. We can help them detail it, similar to how when the county went through the process with Bug Tussle, we got connections to outline facilities and things like that included in those proposals, in addition to actually lending Bug Tussle the loans. So something that hasn't been mentioned yet today in this meeting is the structure of scoring the grant proposals. The county holds 7 of the 100 points for each project by writing a resolution in support of. So that's another thing that we can do to support a project. And the providers will be talking to us because they will be seeking those 7 points. The last time there was a similar process, 7 points was, it was much bigger than the spread between the high proposals and the low proposals. That really can make or break a provider's grant proposal. So they will want to talk with us. Some have already kind of opened dialogue with us just preliminarily. We haven't gone into detail on anything yet, but we're coming to the board tonight with a resolution to give us a foundation for myself as the administrator and the broadband committee to know, to be able to say the Kewaunee County Board has addressed this, and here's our starting points. Here's things that we will consider in the future. This resolution doesn't actually take any action other than being on the record saying what you might consider in the future. Anything that's actually done or presented to you in the future for future action, such as a low interest loan or such as a resolution in support of a certain provider's project, that would take a future action. So today is just being on the record saying, these are some of the strategies we're willing to consider as we talk through the process.
And it should be highlighted. This is, we've done some contracts with Bug Tussle that have expanded internet access in the county. This is federal money. This is much, much larger and potentially gives us the opportunity to greatly improve, to greatly expand internet access without cost. to the county. But we want to make sure that we are prepared and so that we're at the front of the line, so to speak, and able to address the proposals that might be brought forward by the various companies. That would help? You still look confused, sorry. Let's go to Supervisor Swaggle. When I think IT cutting edge, I go to him.
Thank you, sir. But can't these companies apply for these grants with us doing nothing tonight
And
by
they would
themselves?
be much less likely to get them. They don't score the points. Supervisor Lukes, then we'll,
August, you talked to the towns last night, so you're saying the county would get 7 points. Would it add points for the towns?
Yep. So going through the scoring a little bit, there's 100 points total. The stuff that local government can influence is really three things: a county level letter or resolution. And in this case, we're recommending a resolution because makes it more formal. The second thing is a letter or resolution from local government for that project unit. So I can't help it but be techie with that because that's what the feds call it. It's called a project unit. But describing that, it's a bunch of addresses. It could be, they haven't defined them yet, but it could be a census block or a township. I'm hoping they pick townships, but they could pick whatever they want. And we'll know that within roughly a month. But by you directing us, now when we have those discussions, we can talk to the towns, we can talk to the other group, which is community anchor institutions. So 7 points for the resolution at the county, 5 points for the local municipality, primarily going to be townships, and then 2 points for a museum or a library, school. I think those are the only two in Kewaunee that are going to qualify as community anchor institutions. And I won't know that, none of us will know that until that map comes out. And that map is in progress right now. There's a preliminary version that you can go look at, but it really doesn't matter until that final one comes out because the providers aren't going to want to sign on a dotted line. If I build buildings, I don't want to do a bid on an architecture on a building when there's no blueprints. So that map is kind of the blueprint for them making bids. So we'll know more once that comes out, probably end of September, but it could come out anytime, hence why the broadband committee wanted to get this in, in your awareness sooner than later so that you knew what was coming. Most likely those resolutions would be coming to the board November, December timeframe.
and I want Supervisor Shelton had her hand up. We'll get to you, but I would like you to comment at the broadband committee, the percent, having the internet access in the county, the difference that makes in population increase versus decrease, income versus value, home values. Don't spend the hour and a half you did at the subcommittee.
No, I won't. I shortened
give us
it.
a synopsis.
Yep.
Although, other than Mr. Geppo.
Well, I'll
would
just go
probably-
off the
most
top of my
people are
head.
Okay.
Yep. I know that it's 3.1% on homes. That's nationwide. So it works out to for an average of about $5,500 a house. So if you've got really good internet, your house value goes up. That obviously impacts taxes. The impact on general economic activity. For a location, the lowest recorded nationally is 1.1% annually. So what that means is if we put $20 million worth of investment here, we're going to get 1% of that back in economic activity annually. And the nice thing about it is that's not tax money. Well, it is tax money. It's stuff you already paid to the feds. We'd like to get it back locally. I'm speaking as a taxpayer when I'm saying that. So I'd like to see the taxes that I saw go off to DC come back here. And in this case, getting those grant funds locally is that equivalent to that. So so I mentioned housing, revenue. So you could figure that revenue is 1.1%, averages 10 state based on UW extension data, and that's in that report. And I know there's a ton of technical crap in there, but it is what it is. That's the way it was reported. So that's what I gave you.
And population increase versus decrease?
Yep, population decrease in that same report, UW shows, and this is also national and it varies a little bit, but it's right around a 3% decrease if you have, and I'm gonna use simpler terms, crap internet. If you have okay internet, you break even. If you have good internet, you grow 3%. So they've been able to correlate that with all other things, not, you know, if you ignore housing, if you ignore everything else and you only use internet as your variable. So if everything else is stable, it's 3% loss, neutral if it's okay. And if you have good internet, it's 3% growth. The economic piece is a little bit bigger though, because if you have crap internet, you're stagnant or decreasing. Okay, you're around 2%, almost 10% growth if you've got good internet. And that is a pretty huge deal. And that's been supported statewide through UW extension reports. There's also an extension report up in the Superior area where they did a whole region, and their numbers were almost exactly the same.
Okay, Supervisor Shelton?
So a couple of questions. So you mentioned unserved and underserved. I can't remember what you said the standard was for those two things.
So just really high level, remember this is all defined by the feds. So what you and I might call good or bad or acceptable, it doesn't really matter because the law says if the advertised rate is below 25.3, it's unserved. If it's above 25.3 but below 100/20, then it's underserved. Really high level, all that stuff doesn't matter. If it's one of those two, it qualifies. That's the 3,800-ish addresses in Kewaunee County that would qualify for BEAD. So it's a speed thing. Think of it as gallons per minute pumped down a pipe. So, and the other thing I would mention is fiber is one of those things that is it's about the cost of roads pretty much, actually. It's pretty close, between 60 and 360,000 a mile. But it can be upgraded and it has a longer life. There's fiber in the ground that was put in the 80s and it's working fine. It's glass. So how long does glass last? Well, close to it. I won't say forever because I don't know, you know, but I wouldn't be surprised. The engineering is they're estimating in some cases 100-year life on it with no, you know, as long as it's not being damaged, dug up, or water. One of the bad things is if water gets inside, you know, I'm a show and tell guy. I got the fiber over there if you want to see it. But if it gets inside there, the water gets in the hole and then freezes and cracks glass. So water is one of the bad things for it.
Supervisor Patricio?
I just want to say this isn't just about streaming movies. It's about, as you guys have pointed out, economics and economic investment really for the county. So I just want to commend the committee for doing the work and getting us on the forefront of this. I think it's you guys have done a great service to the county.
Oh, hey, this has been a hoot because it's been like every time we have this, it's like a 300 level college course in, you know, IT course with August, and I don't have to pay for it. So Supervisor Shelton.
So there's one thing I haven't heard in here tonight, and something that helped me wrap my head around what the BEAD grants were. The BEAD grants cover about 70% of the provider's costs, and then they'll come to the counties.
Yep.
So if you could go into that a little
Sure.
bit.
It's a little bit screwy. Again, it's the feds. So they think the cost of the addresses is not going to exceed around, and I'm going to just say 5,000 because I don't know what the number is. Nobody does. But they think it's only going to be about 5,000 because if you divide 990 million, which is about what's left out of that 1.01 billion, and that's my guess, that's not official. So you could divide it out, but it's 280,000 addresses into that number. Well, is it going up or down a little? I'm guessing it's going to go down a little because all the providers, like they're going to take some in Luxembourg and they're going to say they've been served because fiber just went in there. So where that might have been marked on the map as a completed location or not a completed location, it might actually be a completed location. So those providers challenged the map, and that's in progress right now. So once that's done, then we'll know what's, you know, good, what's bad, all that kind of stuff. But if you just do that 266,000, which was the original number, you divide it out, it's about 5,000, 4,000, let's say $4,000 an address in grant money, which then what's the match to that? It's 25% of that. So if that match is there, you're at, let's say, if it's $4,000, $5,500. If I put $2,000 in, I get $6,000 out. The providers are never going to give in 95, 99% of the times any more than $2,000. Well, what's magic about that number? The $2,000 is what they can make off my house. That's the average that they can make. So if they go to the bank and they want to get money to put the fiber in the ground, they want to build that pipe, the most they're going to get is $2,000. So if it costs more than $2,000, they're not going to build it. And that's why my house doesn't have fiber. And that's why a lot of houses don't have fiber. Now, if they're right nice tight, like right out here, now all of a sudden you have some competition because now somebody else can lay fiber there and they can steal half the people and still make money. That's why there's more competition here, because there's more customers. Those rural areas are going to be the challenge. And as much as it would be great if we could do no money at all, the challenge gets to be, remember, $2,000 is the most they're going to give, which would be a $6,000 match. So that's total of $8,000. If it's more than $8,000 to get to my house, they're going to walk away. So they may come to you and say, could you help us out? Can we get that $10,000 difference, $5,000 difference, whatever it is, times X number of houses? So they're going to lump those houses together and then they're going to come to you for some request. If I'm the internet provider, I'm going to say that August guy's house is way out in the middle of nowhere. I can get maybe $8,000 or $5,000 on it. You got to come up with the other $5,000 and then multiply that times 10 houses, 20 houses, whatever's in that block. And then they'll come to, that'll be the request. Did I clarify the costing the way that makes sense?
And it could be a low interest loan. It could be cash. It could be a number of things that we would decide down the road.
Yep. Repeating, it's low interest loan, cash, in-kind trade, which is stuff. Like I could give labor, his labor could be considered part of in-kind trade. And it looks like cash in terms of the grant. But remember, we're not filling that paperwork out. That's whoever the internet provider is. So if August Internet is doing it, August Internet has to do all those forms in triplicate. Not Jeremy, not Ross, not anybody here. But we still would have to do all of our due diligence on our part.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Any other questions? All right. Yes, Supervisor Romden.
Just a comment. I'm all for expanding broadband anywhere we can get it. And reading this resolution, everything hinges on approval by the county board. But just as a reminder to the board that we are the fiscal stewards of the people's money. And we have to make sure that these requests from independent providers are on solid ground and that the county can financially afford to do it. Just a comment.
Okay. Any other questions? Supervisor Brown? Light? Yes, by
There we
passing
go.
this.
By passing this resolution doesn't obligate us to any of these
Not any
grants
specific
coming down
contract.
the road, anything like that. That's all this
No.
basically does.
It
It's open up
indicates-
the opportunities
Right.
for these grants to be offered.
Right. It indicates to the providers that we are open to this.
Okay.
We are interested.
We're interested but not obligated to spend
That
a whole
is-
bunch of money or loan a bunch of money to
That is
the
correct.
internet or, okay.
Every resolution would be carefully evaluated by this board. Supervisor, or Mr. Depo had a comment on that? Is there you asking
Yeah,
to
so
be
that-
excused?
No, I just wanted
Okay.
to clarify a little bit of that. It's declaratory. This is declaratory. This is the county is interested in this and willing to work with the ISPs, willing to work through the process. It is not obligatory and it doesn't obligate the county to do anything, and it is not restrictive. So it is not going to tie your hands in any way either. If the county decided it wanted to do cash, something else, future resolutions, future projects can all be considered.
All right, other questions? All right, you have a motion before you with a second. You may register your vote. We have 17 yes, 1 opposed. All right, motion carries. So that is the last of the resolutions. So we go on to reading of a consideration of ordinance read at previous county board meeting. We have none. Communications, resolutions from other counties.
From Jackson County, a resolution advocating for an inpatient behavior health facility for northern Wisconsin. And also Jackson County, support of state investment for mental health funding.
All right, Kewaunee County events. No events? All right. We'll move on. Chair comments. There are none. Setting meeting dates for the next county board meeting. We have them already scheduled for September and October. We will be looking at, I would need a motion for November 4th at the 6 PM. And I will tell you, the clerk and I spent some time. You are perhaps aware that that is an election that month and various other things. So this is kind of what it has to be due to the schedule of clerk. Supervisor Romden?
I just want to let you know that I will not be available for November 4th. I'm going to be gone from the 2nd through the 10th, so.
All right, we will miss you. Supervisor Swagel?
We have to take the 4th with the election because of passing the budget.
There were numerous
Because with election
restrictions.
night, that never works good for Jamie ever, so.
Well, obviously the clerk.
Apportionment is also due
Okay.
to the state, so we
Yeah.
always have to have that one a little earlier.
Monday, not Tuesday.
Right, we are
Thank you,
limited.
Thank you, yes.
We are very limited in November. Is there a motion? Supervisor Poppy makes a motion, second by Supervisor Lazansky. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Oppose, motion carries. We have a motion to adjourn. Supervisor Vollenweider, second by, was that a second Supervisor Kinnard? All in favor of the motion signify